today we are going to be looking at my top 5 Pygmalien items or cards from the development build of the game. This is almost definitely going to change as we move forward, but we've got quite a lot of them to look at the moment, and there's some really interesting ones, so let's take a look. Here is one I prepared earlier. I've gone through and actually given my ratings to the Pygmalien item set. I went through and did it, the Vanessa one, with everyone. I'm sure there'll be some things you guys might disagree on in this one. But this is where we're at. So we're not going to be going through the whole thing today. In fact, because there's so many missing items from this list, and definitely so many changes to come, I don't want to go over the whole thing. In fact, I'm probably not going to go over the whole thing for anyone, at least until the game is fully released. With that in mind, we're going to be going over sections of the item lists, ones that I find interesting or important to know about, and discussing them. Today we have my top 5, and I'll throw in a couple of honorable mentions towards the end. But these are my top 5 just pure powerhouses. Pygmalien items that will win you the game if the game launches as it is now. Starting at number 5 is one that will almost definitely win you the game. Exceptionally strong early, but definitely needs some help later on, and that is the Pygmalien longbow. Every 17 seconds, the Pygmalien longbow will do 50 points of damage. Now, we've said a few times that the sort of aim for combat is for it to last between 10 to 15 seconds during the sort of mid-regions of the game. Early on, however, this 50 damage item will almost certainly secure you some wins, and then once you get into the middle of that area, it is going to need that help to bring it forward. But 50 damage is still a lot, especially for Pygmalien, whose main focus is health and defense. So, its core power is pretty high, I've given it a 4. Its ease of synergy is only a 3. It's not something that's particularly easy to synergize with, because it doesn't synergize with a lot of things. It doesn't make as good a use of power as some of the other items that Pygmalien has. We'll see one of those in a bit. It just kind of needs some help with either cooldown reduction or charge speed. Its synergy power isn't super high because it is strong by itself, and it needs the synergy to get to that level rather than it becoming unstoppable when it hits a ridiculous amount of cooldown. Okay, so Pygmalien longbow, a good option for damage. But what if you don't want to take damage? Well, health is definitely a good option on Pygmalien, and so is shielding, but there is something so infuriating that I had to give it position number 4. And that's the ice cream truck. So, there are a couple of options here. I could have gone with ice cream truck. I could have gone with igloo, which you can see right underneath it in the sheet to my left here. They both have a similar sort of idea. However, igloo, even though for the extra second, it is a rare, so it costs more, it appears later in the game, and ice cream truck also gives you a chocolate bar, which, you know, that's some free health. Gotta love free health. So, Ice Cream Truck for pure power. I mean, you'll see we've done this for both of the freeze items. For pure power, I have gone with a 5. This is its potential core power without any synergies. And its potential core power without synergies is that high because you can freeze the single most important, most integral item of your opponent's build and just instantly win from that. You can also freeze their most useless item, but most people are going to try and have a unique, very compact synergy working. Those will be the best strategies, I imagine. So freezing any part of that is going to disrupt it. So naturally, it's one of the most high core power items that Pygmalien can get his hands on, and will infuriate your enemies, so some extra points are thrown in for that. In terms of synergies, it's relatively easy to synergize with. It's not particularly potent, though. Any Pygmalien build that needs to stall for time will enjoy this, but as a large item it's going to be kind of hard to fit in, so I've only given it a 3 for this. And then for its synergetic power, it doesn't bring an awful lot to those builds either. It is just a stall mechanic. It's the type of item you can slot into some other builds if you don't already have a synergy going, and it'll almost never be the wrong answer. There just might sometimes be a more right answer. And one of those more right answers is at number 3. And that's going to be the flail. We're heading back to damage builds just for a moment here. So, the flail on an 8-second cooldown will deal 7 damage 3 times. For anyone that does know their maths, plural, not math, that is 21 damage. every 8 seconds. If a standard fight's going to last between 10 to 15 seconds, 21 damage, that's sizable, that's alright. But that's not position number 3. We've had something that freezes and something that does 50 damage. Why did I rank Flail above this? Well, that's in part due to its ease of synergy and its synergetic power. Its core power only at a 3, those two both a 4. And that's because strength is something that Pygmalion has quite good access to. Just like Vanessa has pretty good access to speed, Pygmalion has good access to strength. It comes from a number of his inbuilt items, as well as items you can find in events throughout the Bazaar. And with any item that hits multiple times, that strength will effectively be tripled. A Pygmalion with 1 strength will not deal 8 damage on one of the strikes and 7 on the other 2 with Flail. All 3 Flail strikes will be upgraded to do 8 damage. So rather than that 1 strength upgrading your Jabalian longbow from a 50 damage to a 51 damage, a net gain of 1, your 1 strength upgrades your Flail from 21 damage to 24 damage, a net gain of 3. So, an item that makes such good use of what I can only assume to be Pygmalion's primary stat, as he has such easy access to it already, outside of health. We'll get into that, don't worry. I couldn't help but rate this very highly. This is probably your best bet as a Pygmalion strength build. Okay, on to number 2. And this is an item that is slightly close to my heart. And those of you that are core to this community, which if you're not, there should be links to my Twitter, Discord, and everything down below. Those of you will recognize this and may have already spotted the hint that I love this card. It's one of the first cards of the Bazaar that I ever saw, and I just thought the idea of beating someone with this is kind of ridiculous. It was a bit of a useless meme card for a couple of the development phases, but where we've landed now, it's actually, in my opinion, Pygmalion's second most powerful card, and works incredibly well with his most powerful card. And that's the Lemonade Stand. You might be confused as to why my second place card has absolutely 0 core power, and how it got this far without it. And I do think it is important, the Bazaar being a game based purely, almost purely at least, on its synergies, that some of those purely synergetic cards can make their way up here. The Lemonade Stand, if you have no other items to synergize with it, no other items to use, literally does nothing except take up space and look pretty, I guess. But the moment you can start selling cards, even useless cards, it starts working for you. And because it just works off of selling things, I've given it a synergy of 5, especially as Pygmalion has ways of generating multiple cards from a single purchase. On top of that, every time you sell a card back to the shop, you not only earn the money back that you spent on it, but Lemonade Stand will permanently increase your maximum health by 20 points. Now, this can get quite crazy and is currently, at least what from the gameplay that we have seen, maybe I'll put some in the background for you here, the best way to get a good, solid run with Pygmalion is to stack health, largely using Lemonade Stand, although there are some other cards you could use instead, or alongside, because why not everything, build up a massive health pool, and then use the Sandstorm to murder your opponent. Lemonade Stand is almost definitely the most efficient way of getting to a very high health pool, so naturally it has found its place on this ranking list. It is the means to an end, although it may not necessarily win you the game outright. Just having a lot of health doesn't necessarily mean much. You can still be bursted down if you don't have any sustain. But before I get there, I want to share a couple of honorable mentions. The first of which is the Pinata, which is very important for the Lemonade Stand build. The Pinata, once you sell it, fills your board with chocolate bars, so by itself doesn't really do an awful lot, although those chocolate bars will at least give you, once it's fixed and no longer bugged, you'll at least get 2 chocolate bars, which will at least give you 20 health when you sell them. So if you have a Lemonade Stand taking up 3 slots, and you sell your Pinata, that is a maximum of 7 chocolate bars that you can then sell. Those chocolate bars will give you max health when you sell them, and the lemonade stand will give you max health when you sell an item. And I think you can probably start to see where I'm going here. You basically double your money on every lemonade stand sell of a chocolate bar. And Pinata gives you a ridiculous number of chocolate bars. You also get 1 gold for every chocolate bar you sell. So this item that cost you back in this build 2 gold and probably now 1, if not 3, will give you a potential 7 gold back, especially if you're combining it with lemonade stand. So yeah, Pinata, if you get a Pinata and you already have a lemonade stand, or vice versa, this can really skyrocket your build. This is basically the key synergy you are looking out for to get you through those early stages of the game. Now, before I go on to how you close out that game and how you win that game with ease, the other honorable mention I have is a Space Scraper. Because Pygmalien doesn't just have high health builds, he can also go for some pretty strong shield builds. At the heart of these shield builds is the Space Scraper. On a 4-second cooldown, gain 12 shield, and if you have at least 50 shield currently, then the effectiveness of all your shielding is doubled, which means you're more likely to stay above 50, which means you're more likely to continue the doubling. It sort of synergizes with itself, so its core power is pretty strong already, and then it synergizes with basically anything that gives you shielding, even health because it protects your health. It synergizes well with freezing because it adds quite nicely together with a store build, or the sort of slow rolling damage like an Atlas Stone or a Jabalian Longbow that we covered already. So plenty of synergies, and it can be quite strong. It's not quite as strong as the health build, so I've only given it 3 for its power in terms of its synergies. But it's still very much a viable option, at least that we've seen glimpses of in gameplay. It's a little hard to know now. We would probably need to see a fair few more of Pygmalien's items. Maybe shielding is better than health. Maybe there aren't enough shielding items to actually support the Space Scraper. But if you want to go for shielding, Space Scraper is your go, and gets my last honourable mention. That brings us to number 1. I kind of alluded to it earlier. This is the item that will win you those maximum health runs. And I don't just mean will get you past your 3-3 win-loss. No, I mean this is the item that will get you to 10 wins. So you need to have already done the work with Pinata and Lemonade Stand. This isn't a pure hierarchy. The number 1 isn't so powerful that it doesn't need the number 2 and everything else beneath it. You still need to have a cohesive build, but if you see this item, please don't sell it. And I'm talking about the luxury tents. On a 6-second cooldown, heal 30% of your maximum health. Every 6 seconds, if you've built a health build, you heal 30% of that. So if you've somehow managed to build up, I don't know, 1,000 health, you're healing for 300 every 6 seconds, which is basically 50 health every second, which most builds will struggle to keep up with, especially if they have to get through that 1,000 health as well. And it's not based on your current health, which means if the enemy is ticking you down from 1,000 to 800 with a big burst, yeah, it's 200 damage already. That's 4 Jabalian Longbows firing. If they somehow manage to fire off 4 Jabalian Longbows, one use of luxury tents heals that all back up, and they have to do it again. And again. Every 6 seconds. Before you even counter and factor in speed. Before you factor in freezing them. Before you factor in any of your other items. Maybe you have multiple luxury tents. Maybe you combine it with the item above it, the Lion's Cane, which deals damage based on your maximum health. You can start to see how luxury tents, just for a small little corner of your board, can always guarantee you that 10-game streak. Anyway, that about does it for my top 5 Pygmalion power items. Yeah, maximum health is probably your best bet, although certainly not your only one. There is shielding, there's multiple versions of damage builds you can go for. Luxury tents take the top spot by far, so keep an eye out for that one. If this changes in the future, as we get towards the release of the game, I will certainly re-record and re-release these videos. I'll try and keep them short and sweet and snappy, and keep you guys up to date on whatever the meta is from our outside perspective, and hopefully, eventually, inside perspective. Anyway, if you're interested in this and all things Bazaar, definitely do give the channel a subscribe and like the video to let me know you want some more top item content. And I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.
I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free.